Things have changed since Lily was born. I used to see Mark's face light up whenever I entered a room, but now I'm lucky to get more than a grunt before he dives back into his phone. His job hasn't changed. If anything, it's less stressful than before, but something in him switched off the day we brought her home. Another painting. That makes 3 this week. Mark's voice sliced through the air, sharp and critical, whenever he caught me setting up my easel. He used to admire my work. He even had my best piece framed in his office. Not anymore. It's not like I'm spending your money, I replied, trying to hide the tremble in my hands as I focused on mixing blues and yellows on my palette. Each word felt like a punch to my gut. Could have fooled me. Look at this place. It's a disaster, he snapped, scanning the room, his eyes zeroing in on every toy and blanket out of place as if they were evidence of my failures. I'm with Lily all day, and she's a handful. I fought back, my voice wavering. Maybe if you helped a little around here. Help with what? You're home all the time. You deal with it. That was our deal, remember? I make the money, you handle the rest. Not my fault you can't manage. He cut me off, leaving no room for argument. Every night ended the same way, with him turning away, dismissing me with a scoff. As he left for work, Lily would tug at the hem of my shirt, her little eyes wide with confusion. "Daddy mad?" she'd ask, her tiny lips quivering. "No, baby, Daddy just has a lot on his mind," I'd reassure her, pulling her into my arms and trying to smile for her sake. "Here, help Mommy choose the colors." Together, we'd paint, her laughter drowning out the bitterness in Mark's tone, creating a world of color that felt like a refuge. I knew my paintings were good, not out of arrogance, but because they were the last remnants of a time when I felt confident and vibrant. That evening, when Mark came home, I did what I always did, greeted him with a warm dinner, a clean house, and Lily, squeaky clean from her bath and dressed in her best pajamas. "Hey," I said, the aroma of roast chicken following me as I approached. "How was your day?" He grunted in reply, shrugging off his coat and tossing it onto the couch. His gaze caught mine, then fell on the easel in the corner of our living room. "Still haven't gotten rid of that junk, huh?" "It's not junk, Mark. I'm working on something," I responded, wariness seeping into my tone. "Looks like a waste of time and money. You could be doing something productive," he said, walking past me to the fridge without waiting for an answer. Productive, it seemed, meant anything that made money or made his life easier. I guess I was doing neither to his liking. "I am doing something," I said, my voice firmer now. "I'm raising our daughter and trying to hold on to something that matters to me. My painting matters to me." He didn't even pause, just opened a beer and took a deep swig. "Call it what you want, Grace. To me, it looks like you're just filling time and making a mess. I'll have to pay someone to clean it up." The sting didn't come from the unkindness of his words. I was getting used to that. It came from the dismissal of my dreams and passion. There was no place for them in Mark's world anymore. "Dinner's ready," I called out, feeling like I was putting on a performance. I stood there with trembling hands as I served the meal. Mark's parents, seated like judges at the head of the table, barely noticing my effort to create a warm, hearty meal. Their eyes were fixed on the easel by the window. "What's this then?" Mark's dad, George, a broad man with a booming voice, jabbed a finger toward my unfinished painting. "Oh, that's just something Grace has been fooling around with," Mark chuckled, waving a dismissive hand before taking his seat. "Real high-class stuff, right?" Laughter rang out, but it felt like a knife cutting at my nerves, laughter that didn't reach their eyes. My, we have an artist now, do we?" Mark's mom, Patricia, chimed in, her voice sharp enough to slice steel. "Why don't you show us your latest masterpiece, dear?" George bellowed, his smile more of a challenge than a gesture of interest. I stood frozen in place, heat creeping up my neck. "It's not done yet," I muttered, but Mark was already striding over to the canvas, grabbing it with far less care than he'd use for a dish towel. "Look at this, folks." Mark laughed, flipping the canvas around like he was unveiling a letter on Wheel of Fortune. "It's supposed to be a landscape. Can you believe it?" George's laughter boomed again. "Looks like a blind dog's nightmare," Patricia tutted, shaking her head, her nostrils flaring with each derisive comment. "Why waste your time with this hobby? Get a job or do something, anything, productive. As if any place would hire me." Mark snorted, setting the painting back down with a thud that sank my heart. "The job market's tough out there, and well, look at her." I swallowed hard, my hands clenched into fists at my sides. "I do plenty. I take care of Lily and this house. My words faltered under their collective gaze. Patricia poked at the food on her plate with a fork, as if she suspected it might be poisoned. Taking care of your family is the least you can do, she sniffed. But honestly, Mark, if you'd married someone with a little ambition. They continued tearing into me, their words pressing down, squeezing the air from my lungs. I felt myself slipping away, becoming smaller and more insignificant in this grand performance of theirs. Something inside me snapped as soon as the meal ended. With a fiend smile, I excused myself, marched up the stairs without looking back, and locked myself in the bedroom. Grace, Mark called, his voice rising up the stairs about half an hour later. You coming back down? We need to clear the table. I did respond. I couldn't. If I opened my mouth, a scream or a sob would escape, and I wasn't going to give them the satisfaction of witnessing my breakdown. I scrolled through my banking app, a frown deepening the lines on my face. Our account was looking dire again this month, and the grocery list wasn't getting any shorter. Lily needed new shoes too. She was sprouting like a weed. Grace, why is there a charge for $48.95 for Martin's art supplies? Mark's voice tumbled in from the living room. I just picked up a few things, I said, tapping through the app to transfer what little remained of my personal savings to cover it. I needed those supplies. Come on, Grace, that's money we could have put towards something important. His tone was flat, almost bored, but with an undercurrent of something else. Was it disappointment? Frustration? Art is important to me, Mark, the same way your golf is important to you. I did mention that his golf clubs cost more than a year's worth of my supplies. Yeah, but golf is networking. It's part of my job. What does your painting get us? A cluttered house and wasted cash? It gets me through the day, I murmured, feeling that familiar tug of war in my chest. Mark snorted. We have to be smart about money, not just spend it on whatever gets us through the day. Budget, Grace. That word felt like a choke chain. I pay for my art supplies with my own money I had before. My voice trailed off, not wanting to spark another fight. That money felt like a distant chapter, one that held job independence and a once shared dream of my own gallery. Your money's our money, isn't it? He shot back, the implication that my financial independence was a thing of the past evident in his tone. And that money is running out fast. Later, at the store, I opted for the cheaper brands, counting every cent, every compromise. I picked up the smallest tubes of paint, the ones I could slip into the cart without drawing any raised eyebrows. Back home, I unpacked the bags with robotic precision, each item a reminder of our tightrope walk over financial ruin. Putting back some luxuries, are we? Mark commented, his gaze landing on the no-name cereal and store-brand pasta. Yes, tightening the belt, I answered without looking at him, concealing the receipts, a paper trail of my crimes. He rummaged through the bags like an investigator searching for a slip-up. Where are the Greek yogurts you like? Isn't this the cheap coffee? I shrugged, busying myself with placing a can of tomatoes in the pantry. Prices went up, had to make some cuts. Don't see any cuts in your art budget, though, he said, his cold finger pointing out the new brushes I had tucked under a loaf of bread. I turned to him, finally meeting his gaze for the first time since the conversation started. This keeps me sane, Mark. My art keeps me sane. My voice was firm, and I clenched my fists around the countertop to stop the tremor in my hand. Well, sanity's quite the luxury item these days, isn't it? He said, nodding toward the brushes, his words deliberate and biting. That night, I painted not out of passion, but frustration. Each stroke felt like a challenge, a cut from our already strained budget to fit within Mark's expectations. But as I worked, I remembered a time when these brushes brought me joy, not the feeling of having to defend myself. Mark was somewhere across the country, tangled up in business meetings when he dropped the latest task on me. His voice buzzed through my phone, sounding distracted, as if he was already halfway out the door. Grace, you've got to put together a birthday present for my boss's wife, Clara. Her big day's in a week. Okay, do you have any cash set aside for that? I asked, squinting at our already tight budget displayed on my laptop screen. Nah, you figure it out, just make it look like we put some thought into it, he muttered, sounding preoccupied. Hang on, you want something nice. But I'm supposed to magic up the funds for it. I could feel heat rising in my cheeks. You always find a way to make it happen, Grace. With that cheerful little line, he was gone. I exhaled slowly, closing my eyes as I fought to push back the frustration gnawing at my last nerve. I didn't have the cash, but I needed something that would truly impress Clara. No pressure, right? After diving deep into her online world, it was clear she had a passion for art. Her feed was filled with gallery visits and photos of canvases that probably cost more than our car. She even posted pictures with artists talking about supporting the arts, patronage, and all that jazz. An idea sparked in my mind, and I grabbed it before it could slip away. A painting from me. I had the paints, I had the canvas, and I definitely had the motivation. I wanted to give Clara something unique, something you couldn't find on any high street. I let the concept settle in my mind, picturing the brush strokes and feeling the drag of bristles against canvas. It would be personal, and best of all, it would be free. Decision made. I knew I'd need every minute of every day if I wanted it to resemble the kind of art Clara admired. I pulled out my old easel, set it up in the living room, and got to work, all the while hoping my little slice of creativity would hold up in the high-stakes arena of business birthday gifts. Day 1. Operation Bombshell. I found myself standing in the middle of my makeshift studio, a corner of the dining room I cleared by pushing the table against the wall. The morning light streamed in, illuminating the chaos of art supplies scattered around. "Mommy, what's all this?" Lily, my 6-year-old, plopped herself right in the middle of the mess, her eyes wide as saucers, mirroring the splattered paint on the floor. "Mommy's making a birthday present, sweetie," I replied, rifling through old brushes with bristles stiffer than my back. "For a lady Daddy works with?" she asked, picking up a brush and examining the crusty edges like a little professional. I snatched the brush from her before it turned into a makeshift sword or fairy wand. "Yes, but I needed to stay nice," I explained. Lily furrowed her brow in confusion. "But why can't Daddy just buy something?" "Lily, go watch your cartoons, okay? I need to think." I wasn't ready to unpack the complexities of our bank account or my marriage with a kindergartner. Burbling something under her breath that sounded far too much like me, she trotted off to the living room, leaving me to my dilemma. The week dragged on, and I found myself pulling double shifts. Daytime mommy, nighttime Picasso. Slowly, the canvas began to fill, taking on a life of its own, something abstract, something that captured the whirlwind of my life lately. I didn't hear a peep from Mark, not a check-in call or even a text asking how things were going. I guess he was too wrapped up in his charts, deals, and whatever else was too important to bother his wife. Lily, on the other hand, was my tiny shadow, always creeping back to watch me paint. "You're really good, Mommy," she said, now on day 4. "You should draw stuff more." I smiled. That was probably the best review I'd ever receive. "Think so, huh? Maybe I will." The night before the big reveal, the painting finally stared back at me, complete. It wasn't just art, it was everything I hadn't been able to say or do, all poured onto the canvas. But I couldn't sleep that night, tossing and turning, my thoughts spiraling. What if Clara hated it? What if Mark thought I'd wasted my time? Morning arrived clear and bright, and the painting was wrapped, not in fancy paper, just brown parcel paper, neatly tied with a bow made from Lily's hair ribbons. Why not? At the boss's wife's birthday bash, I held the package tightly, hoping the painting would be a hit. I slid through the crowd, eyes down, wishing I could blend into the wallpaper. Mark was there, just foaming hot from his latest trip, looking every inch the man who had it all, except the picture-perfect trophy wife. His eyes swept over the polished women in their cocktail dresses before landing on me, and it felt like a ton of bricks had dropped. I saw that look on his face as if he'd just bitten into a lemon. He glanced me up and down and shook his head just enough for only me to notice. The room faded slightly, like someone turned down the volume on the party, leaving me with the sound of my heartbeat pounding in my ears. Then his gaze zeroed in on a package cradled in my trembling hands. His eyes flashed, and oh boy, I recognized that look. I sensed the storm brewing before he even spoke. "What's that?" he spat, barely keeping his anger in check. I pulled the package closer, as if I could shield it, and myself from the impending fallout. "It's a gift. My painting," I said, my words barely hanging in the air before he cut me off. "A painting? You're kidding, right?" His voice was loud enough to catch a few glances our way. I tried to shush him with my eyes, but he was beyond caring. "You actually think it's okay to hand her a piece of amateur hour?" Whispers began to swirl around us, soft at first, but growing stronger. "Mark, please, not here," I begged, my cheeks burning. "Did you lose your mind?" he roared, and the room didn't just pause, it froze. "You're making us look like fools." By now, we were the main event. Eyes flicked to us, then away, then back again, as if they were watching a tense game of tennis. I shrank, wishing I could melt into the floorboards. Mark's face was a shade of red I'd only seen on traffic lights. Just great. Grace, he vented, throwing his hands up. You don't think, do you? The heat flooding my cheeks told me I was blushing, and not in a cute way. My hands shook, but I clutched the painting tighter. What else could I hold on to? I took a deep breath, trying to remember why I thought this was a good idea. Now everyone's going to have a go at us. Thanks to you and your dumb idea, he added, his words sharp as a knife, aimed at anyone pretending not to listen. My mouth opened, words ready to tumble out to defend myself or maybe just to tell him to shut up. But what could I say with the entire room's eyes burning into us? Instead, I just stood there, the fool, he called me, wishing the ground would swallow me whole. The laughter that followed Mark's outburst felt like daggers. Even as the room spun, I caught the boss's eye. He was watching quietly, confusion etched on his face. Clara wore a half-concerned, half-intrigued frown, which gave me a sliver of hope. She waved her hand, cutting through the noise. Quiet down, everyone. Let's see what Grace has brought. I moved on autopilot, my hands still jittery as they tore away the wrapping paper. The art spilled into the room, all the colors and shapes I had poured myself into for nights. Clara's eyebrows shot up. Oh my, she said, and the room hushed, waiting for her judgment. This is quite something, Grace. Mark was still fuming by my side. Yeah, something all right. I ignored him, searching Clara's face for any sign of approval. It's for you. Happy birthday. She tilted her head, studying the painting like it was a puzzle. It's bold. I like bold. Don't you, darling? She nudged Mark, pulling him into this. The boss was tough to read, but he nodded. Don't see something like that every day. Mark tried to jump back in. Oh, come on, you're saying you like this mess? Clara's voice snapped as she turned to him with a squint. Mark, I'd watch it if I were you. Your wife has talent, and I won't have you embarrass her any further. It's unbecoming. The room fell into a tense silence, the kind where you could hear a sneeze 3 houses down. Look at the colors, the feeling in it, Clara continued. Now it's got life. Mark attempted a save. Well, sure, if you like that sort of thing. But Clara cut him off. I do. It's decided. This goes right in the foyer. I blinked. Was this actually happening? You sure, babe? The boss chimed in. It's not exactly. Clara shot him a look, and he trailed off. Standard? Right, it's unique. She extended her arm toward me like a beacon in her high heels and overpriced suit. See? Thank you, Grace. This here's a real gift, folks. It's got soul. Just like that, the murmurs started up again. But this time, they were different. People were nodding, some even looking at me with what felt like respect. Clara still held my painting like it was a treasure, turning her eyes back to me. So, Grace, she said, drawing the room's focus, ever thought about showing your work in a gallery? Mark let out a scoff. I heard it, but my eyes were glued to Clara. Nah, who'd want to see my stuff? Don't worry, Grace, I would, and I know people. Clara's voice was firm, her eyes sharp. Mark tried to laugh it off. Come on, Clara, she's just dabbling. Clara quirked an eyebrow at him. So she dabbles better than some pros I know. What's it to you? I swallowed, feeling like I was teetering on the edge of something big. I don't know. I've never. What's to know? You jump in, I'll help. Clara's look was commanding, not asking. A nervous giggle slipped from my lips, wild-sounding even to my own ears. Sure. Good. It's settled, then. After that, whispers flitted around like moths to a flame. People who barely gave me the time of day were now hanging on my arm, talking about my work. It felt surreal, like walking through someone else's life. Mark was suddenly there again, his hand on my back, almost scalding. You're not serious about this, are you? There was an edge in his voice, like a knife threatening to cut. I turned to him, feeling the weight of the crowd and the pull of something new. Yeah, I am. My voice was stronger than it had felt in years. He looked at me, really looked at me for the first time that night. But what about us? What about us? I repeated. We've been over for longer than I want to admit. That shook him. He stepped back. I thought we were fine. I turned to face him fully. You thought wrong. The words were colder than I intended, but they needed to be said. Mark ran a hand through his hair, looking defeated. So what? We just end it. I glanced down at the color splash across my fingers at the rings that no longer meant what they were supposed to. We ended it a long time ago. Now we're just making it official." He didn't have anything to say to that. I watched him walk away, shoulders hunched. Clara's hand touched my shoulder. "You okay, hon?" I nodded. "I am, thanks to you." She winked. "What are friends for, right? And you, Grace," she paused, squeezing my shoulder. "You're going to light up this town with your art. Just you wait." With that, I felt my heart start to hammer for a whole new set of reasons. Ahead of me, there wasn't just an ending. There was a beginning, painted in the boldest colors I could imagine. Lily and I. We'd be more than fine. We'd be us. Unapologetically, unfalteringly us.